And
Yeah.
it's entirely about a global system of white supremacy. And so I would love to have you to hear you talk a little bit more for our audience and folks that have been joining us. Jump in the comments if you're joining. Leave a question if you're watching live. Make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe. It really means a lot. But Edwin, yeah, like help our audience understand how is this all a part of global white supremacy? Because people might look and be like, um, well, it's not a one-to-one correlation, the racial categories and the understandings of race in America and South Africa, right? Like there's different categories, but so the details might be a little bit different, but the mechanisms and the workings of power are very much the same. Yeah, help our audience understand that.
It worked the same everywhere. White supremacy was invented and designed in the then United Kingdom. It was distributed to the US, or which is America today, and then it was redistributed amongst all the African countries. So the packaging, as with most messages, as it reaches each of a different town, the message might be slightly different, but the package that you deliver is still as dangerous as it was in the first instance. And so, if the American people want to understand what we went through, they should just look at their own history of where they come from. But as it stands to once colonized, they become the colonizer when they don't know what better to do with their time. And this is what had happened in this incident. So, just to give you an idea, Ryan and the viewers and listeners, South Africa is made up of 63 million people. 63 million. How
I
that
don't think people
percentage
realize how
works?
big South Africa is. Like, it's not a
It's massive.
small, like
It's massive.
obscure
It's
country.
massive.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, it's massive. That's another thing. The maps that you have is all skewed, so it looks
right.
like you're bigger than some, but you're smaller than most. But to break that down, we are 63 million people, right? Of that 63 million, only 7% makes up white people, right? White people is only 7%. So 93% of the country is black, right? And then you have divisions within the black, but it's still 93% majority black. Now you think about that, 93% of the 63 million is black, and you have 7% that is white. Now, how ridiculous white supremacy is, those people in the 7%, they created a system of apartheid that said that people should be living separate, white on their own. They transfused all the Jim Crow laws, and they brought it into South Africa, and then they
Yeah.
spruced it up a little bit so that they have their own spices mixed into it. So it was slightly different, but still had the same impact. You know, no marriages between white and black, no black people allowed in white townships or in white towns. When they saw that you white, or when black people were living in uh, areas close to the beach or in nice set areas with nice views, they would forcefully remove those people and throw them in the slums. So people still live under that conditions, and they still own those places that they took away, right? So that's the country that we live in. We have vast majority of people living in abject poverty and in the worst conditions ever. When you get to South Africa, you'll be shocked to see that people are living in the type of filth that not even an animal should be kept. And then right on the borders where all the sunshine, green leafy suburbs and all of that, that's what white people are, right? Which they took
Yeah.
from these people. And so fast forward to 31 years later, where we are in this country in terms of democracy. There was negotiations when in 1994, when apartheid ended. There was negotiations between the incoming black government and the white leadership and business people. Whatever that agreement was, people then looked for their own benefit and not the benefit of the country, because all of the people that was part of that, including our current president, are all wealthy. They are rich beyond their needs, and the country has gone to shit. So that would tell you what that is. But the one thing that remained, even under all of this, is that the disparity of poverty, wealth, and the suffering of black people remain and white people remain as the superior group in this country. And they still own the economic power, and they still own the social power, and all we were left with was political power. That's why you see us fight amongst each other for political power and to fight with each other to get the upper hand. But in terms of the country's layout, white people still dominate and run this country, even though they only make up 7% of the country.
Yeah. And I think that's a point for audiences of the antidote. One of the things that we talk about, that I talk about all the time, is we really need to understand the function. And a mutual friend of ours, Robin D'Angelo, always talks about, how does this function,
Yeah,
right? And what we need to understand is that whiteness functions as a way to allow a certain group of people, those folks we call white, to hoard material resources, to lay
yeah,
claim over natural resources, over people, to accumulate wealth and power, and then to do whatever is within their power to rationalize the grip on that, to not share that, to
yeah,
not spread, right? And that is what, so when we talk about what's happening, my people are Irish, right? That's what the UK
yeah,
colonized Ireland first. They needed resources, they needed people, they demonized Irish folks.
yeah,
Um, and so it's not a coincidence that Ireland is one of the first countries to co-sign South Africa's claim of genocide against Israel, right? Because there's a
yeah,
historical legacy there that whiteness works really
yeah,
hard to get people who look like me to forget and to understand, like,
yeah,
hey, we're so worried about the doors that whiteness can open for us that we don't realize that it's actually closing us off from the vast majority of people on the planet, the vast majority
yeah,
of power on the planet. And to build relational power and community, that there's so much abundance if we just get rid of racism. If we get rid of white
yeah.
supremacy, there's abundance to be partook in. And
Absolutely. If you think about it, Brian, think about those two things before I speak to what you were just talking about now. The power, which you mentioned earlier. So we think power is an overarching dominant effect in terms of numbers, right? But what
right.
I'm telling you about how it looks like over here is to show you that in America you have a majority white population. So you would think, oh, that makes sense. That's why they dominate. The same with the UK. They the dominant group. That's why they dominate. So you would have to see that that would go on as you go along through all these countries. But I'm telling you that in this country, they are 7% of 100% of the country and they still dominate. You understand? And so
Right.
that's how powerful this shit is. And so when you say we need to get rid of white supremacy and there's enough resources, that's what we've been saying about Africa. We have enough
Right.
to be the dominant power and hold the West at a ransom to survive because we own all the raw materials that they need to make the money that they use to then oppress us. And that
And
is
the
what is becoming more clear now, and that's why Trump and all of these guys are becoming warmongers, because they know what's going to happen if the dollar falls and BRICS
I
becomes a
was gonna say, yeah,
dominant power in the
people.
conversation.
It,
Yeah,
it's terrifying to the West, the idea of an African Union, a unified African continent, BRICS, right? Like that, the economic alliance, like it's terrifying. And the what's wild about it is
yeah,
the Trump administration and white nationalists and racists that he's got behind him, I think, really underestimate the extent that power that whiteness has. Like it's not gonna go that way, right? Like you can see with the tariffs and stuff, China's like, we'll go somewhere else. We'll go here. There are other options. And I think we're in this
yeah,
really interesting political moment
yeah,
where
yeah,
we'll see, right? We'll see what happens. I think it's gonna be a test. We'll see what happens. Edwin, before
yeah,
you get out of here, I I want to know, like, at the end on the antidote, we don't just analyze the problems. We bring solutions. We talk about what can we do. So for folks, and I know we've talked about that, right? At the social justice agency, you're working, you're organizing, you're doing that, but you also have a really dope conference coming up.